All right, hey guys, how's it going? So I come to you with a guest.
Should I like pop in?
What? Yeah, I guess. So anyway, this is my brother Alex.
Hello, I'm Alex, his brother.
He lives in Texas.
See, that's yes in Spanish.
Near Brian of Bookish, I suppose. One of my booktube friends lives in Texas. But anyway, I thought that Alex and my mom are visiting for a few nights, and mom is off in the background. And I thought that I would bring Alex on and make him talk about books a little bit. So I thought that I would have him do the New York Times by the book tag, which is just a nice kind of a little tag that just has some like general bookish questions that are kind of fun and relatively easy, I think. So anyway, shall we just get to it?
Yeah.
So the first question is, what book is on your nightstand right now?
East of Eden by John Steinbeck.
And what do you think of it so far?
Well, I'm like 2-3 chapters in, so far it's a lot of world building. I don't know, have you read that? No. It's a lot of world building right now, so a lot of backstory. So it's not quite drawn me in yet. It's a slow read for now. But, it's like, isn't it one of the best rated books in all of history or something like that, I think.
Isn't
or
it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So I'm sticking with it just because I think it won Steinbeck his Nobel Prize. So I'm going to stick with it. But so far, it's pretty slow, but...
Yeah, a lot of people rank that as their favorite Steinbeck.
Yeah.
I've only read Of Mice and Men and Grapes of Wrath.
Mice and Men.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I read that in high school. That's one of the 2 books. It's one of 2 books I actually read in high school and didn't just go to Spark Notes.
Fair enough.
The second one was Animal Farm.
Nice.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say To Kill a Mockingbird. But...
Nope. That was Spark Notes.
Nice. Yeah. I actually have I have a John Steinbeck on my shelf that is he wrote like a rendition of the King Arthur legends.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I have on my shelf.
Cool. Cool.
I've been meaning to read East of Eden forever, so
cool.
That's cool. Yeah, and East of Eden is a lot of people's favorite John Stein.
Yeah.
Oh, I already said that.
Yeah,
but
you
anyway.
said that.
Anyway, number 2 is what was the last truly great book you read?
The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway.
Nice.
I mean, it's not really, but it's a novella. I read it in like half a day. Not even.
Fair.
I didn't read it all the way through, but yeah, The Old Man and the Sea, and I love that because I'm a big fisherman, hunter, and everything. So
yeah,
it really resonated with me, and it's the first Hemingway book I read. So it was really cool to see his writing style. It's super unique and very to the point and short, almost confusing.
Yeah, I always like in that book the sort of relationship that the man develops with the fish.
With the fish,
the marlin.
yeah.
I mean, like that about it.
That's the main reason why I liked it, because being a hunter, being a fisherman, I have those same types of feelings with fish and things that I hunt and fish. Like I shot a deer 2 weeks ago, and the first thing I did was I sat by it and I, talked to it. That sounds so weird saying it out loud, but it is what it is. I sat down and I said thank you, and it developed a relationship with that animal. Now it's in my freezer and it tastes delicious.
Yeah, that's fair. So what you probably all have gathered already in this movie, and which most people gather within about 30 seconds of experiencing the 2 of us in one room, is that we are completely different.
You couldn't design 2 different brothers.
Yeah.
Figure skating, hockey, books, hunting and fishing.
Ecology, psychology.
Psychology, yeah. Ecology, genetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was switched in the hospital.
Incidentally, to change the topic again, The Old Man and the Sea also won Hemingway, both the Pulitzer and probably his Nobel.
I think I remember that. Either that or it was The Sun Also Rises, maybe?
The Sun Also Rises was like his first book, though.
Was it?
I think.
Okay.
So I think it was The Old Man and the Sea.
Yeah, I have Hemingway's. He has a big book of his novellas, and I need to work through that.
Yeah, I've heard that he was a better short story writer
Oh,
than
yeah.
not that novelist.
Novelist, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, number 3. If you could meet any writer, dead or alive, who would it be, and what would you want to know?
Darwin or Hemingway. And I wouldn't necessarily want to know anything. I just want to have a conversation. Well, Darwin, I would want to know a lot of things. I don't know what specifically, but Darwin is the father of what I do professionally. So it'd be great to sit and have a conversation with him. And I'd love to get out to the Galapagos Islands and everything where he did all his groundbreaking theoretical work and lab work. But then Hemingway just sounds like a badass because he was a big hunter. You know, he lived in somewhere in Africa for a long time and did a lot of hunting and stuff like that. So it'd be really cool to sit down and have a conversation with him. So, yeah.
He's also sounds like a bit of a bastard, too.
Hemingway? Oh, totally. Yeah. Totally. I mean, it'd be cool to read his biography. I don't know.
There's been a lot written.
Yeah, I need to read one of his biographies, but yeah, it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool to talk to both of them.
Yeah. So, Alex studies fish, right?
Yeah.
Still?
Yes.
And, like, genetics and such. Do you still study, like, speciation, or has it moved away from that?
So, I could talk about that for about 2 hours. I actually no longer believe in the species concepts.
In the concept of species?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's this whole swath of On the Origin of Species that you just disagree with? Since he goes on about different species for like 50 pages.
Yeah, so, and the reasoning behind it is, so, make a very, very long story short, obviously, him and his cat are different species. I'm not arguing with that. But through my work, I've found a lot of what's known as cryptic diversity, which is things that look alike that are actually not alike genetically. So in Texas, we have these fishes, these springs exist in these freshwater spring systems, and there's a lot of endemism, meaning that there's a lot of species that only exist in those springs. And they look morphologically identical, but genetically they're super diverged. So it's kind of thrown this whole species concept idea into whack, and I mean, I'm not the only one that's done it, you know. And so when I think of species, because I also study hybridization. In natural hybridization, species hybridize all the time. Hybridization is one of the things that leads to a ton of biodiversity. Speciation via hybridization is a big thing to study. And so if two species can reproduce, why would they be considered separate species? Because they can produce viable offspring. However, where I do draw the line is if species don't hybridize or can't hybridize, they produce offspring that are infertile, and that's due to some sort of reproductive isolation, meaning that there's prezygotic, meaning they look completely different, so they're never gonna mate because they don't recognize one another as the same species. Or there's post-zygotic isolation, where they look close enough to where they could think they're the same species, so they reproduce, but the offspring they produce are either infertile, so they can't produce subsequent generations, or they just die. They have very high mortality rates, so they just die. So, no, I wouldn't disagree with Darwin, and I think with how he was working and the time he was working, obviously, he was ahead of his time with a lot of things that he thought. And I think that if he were around today, he'd be really, really into everything that me and other folks are researching with evolutionary genetics, I guess you could say.
You should read his Voyage of the Beagle.
I should.
Yeah, I just got a copy of that email.
I know. I read Origin of Species like 10 years ago when I was an undergrad. I need to reread it. But yeah. So,
nice.
To make a very long story short, speciation is very, very complicated. And how do you define a species? Right? We go out, we have these arbitrary measures where we would define a species. But a lot of those nowadays with genomics and genetics don't hold up. Or we're discovering that our arbitrary designations aren't enough because of some work that me and others have found, where we have these species that are identical to the eye, but super genetically diverged. Yeah.
It's interesting because I've been chipping away at The Ancestor's Tale by Richard Dawkins, and he, in that book, starts with modern humans and works backwards through human evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll go to like our first common ancestor with Neanderthals, and then our first common ancestor with Homo Denisova, whatever, and then go back to all the way to the beginning of life. And he talks about at the beginning as a preamble about how whenever two new species are created, there was always some point in time where the parent species had two members who were a member of the same exact species, but who would sire two different species, basically. And that was just such a weird thought, you know.
Can I draw?
Yeah.
So we often think of, right, you see a phylogenetic tree. We think of it as this, branching tree, right, that looks like something like this, for example, right? But we may only sample because that's when we're alive, right here. So we're in this super narrow window of today, right? But they don't stop evolving today just because we sampled them, right? It's a sliding window. Things are always changing. So to call something a species today may not be a species in 2, 10, 5 years, especially with some of these fishes that I work with. Their generation time is less than a year. So in 10 years, they could be completely different from what they are today. And so that's kind of the evolutionary ecological genetics field nowadays, is how do you define a species? Do we even need to define a species? And with conservation and everything, everyone wants to define a species, but protecting species doesn't work. You need to protect their habitat, their environment, where they occur, because if they don't have a habitat or environment in which to live, they're screwed anyways. So, yeah.
Cool.
Rant over.
Yeah. It was a long sidetrack, but that was cool.
I still got about 2 more hours in me.
So, anyway, sounds like you would have a lot to talk about with both of them.
I would. I'm very interested in that. Not study it. So.
Yeah. All right, number 4. What books might we be surprised to find on your shelves? Of course, no one knows, Alex. So.
Yeah. Thank God. Twilight, the Twilight series. Embarrassingly enough, I read all those books. I didn't see all the movies, so at least I got that going for me. But I read the Twilight books, and I'm pretty sure I still have all the copies.
I read the first one. I read the first one. I read half the second one. So.
Well, good for you.
You did tell me once that you like them, though.
Yeah, I know. That was a different Alex.
Okay, nice. Okay, number 5. Yes, number 5. How do you organize your personal library?
I don't.
Oh, I knew that would be your answer. So they just sort of
I go where they fit. They go where they fit. Right. If I can fit them all on a bookshelf, that's where they go.
Fair enough. How many books do you own? Would you estimate? 492.
I have no idea. I don't know.
I mean, what?
Maybe 150.
Okay.
Most of which are biology, ecology books or textbooks or stuff like that.
Yeah. Number 6. What book have you always meant to read and haven't gotten around to yet? Is there anything you feel embarrassed never to have read?
So, question 1 is Lewis and Clark's journal.
I found a copy of that.
Yeah, I have 2 copies because they wrote in old-timey English, so they've been translated. And I have those I need to read. So that's part 1. Part 2, anything you feel embarrassed to not have read would be Lord of the Rings. I still have not yet read the Lord of the Rings books.
You've read part of
the first one, but then I never picked it back up. I just saw the movies.
Well, I've only read Lord of the Rings once.
Yeah.
Which is probably surprising to a lot of the people who watch my channel because I have such a reputation as a Tolkien fanatic. But yeah. I love the Silmarillion, actually, more than the Lord of the Rings. So, and I've read that 7 times. So.
I haven't read it.
Yeah. It's kind of kind of written in King Jamesian, King James Bible kind of English, so it's not the easiest going. But anyway, cool. Yeah. But you're a big fan of the Lord of the Rings films.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Have you read The Hobbit?
Nope.
No? Fair enough. Alright, number 7, disappointing, overrated, just not good. What book did you feel you were supposed to like but didn't? Do you remember the last book you put down without finishing?
So that's the thing with me. I'm very picky, and if I'm at all disinterested or don't like it, I'd stop reading it. So I can't really answer that question.
Well, you're in good company.
Yeah, so I don't know. The last book I put down without finishing would be book 2 of this series. I need to look it up. I'm really bad with names. I got that from Mom. But I loved the first book, and then the second book was it's Blood Raven. I have to look it up.
Rothfuss?
Yeah,
Patrick Rothfuss?
no, that's a good one. Where's my phone? I don't know where my phone is, but I can look it up.
You want to just use mine?
Sure. Where's your internet, Safari? There we go. Blood
Raven. That sounds like it's from from Game of Thrones.
What's that? I
Sounds
mean,
like
it's like a
from
fantasy book. No, that's not it. It's not Blood Raven. Damn it. I'm not going to be able to think of the name.
Alright, well, anyway.
Tower. I think that's...
Bessie, you do not have alcoholic
Yeah, I
beverages.
don't. Tower Lord. So, Blood Song. Tower Lord is the second book by Anthony Ryan. The first book is phenomenal. Loved it. I've read it twice. But I get about a quarter of the way through the second book, and I stopped it twice now. I don't know if your Goodreads app loads. But, yeah, the first book was phenomenal. Tower Lord is the second book. Raven's Shadow is the name of the series by Anthony Ryan. The first book is phenomenal. Highly recommend it.
Oh, do I have a friend who's read it?
I don't know. Do you?
Oh, okay.
Marsha. So, yeah, that's a book that I started and didn't finish. Yeah, and it's pretty highly rated, I think.
Yeah.
So, let's see what's the name of the first book. Blood Song is the first book. That's really good. Raven Shadow, book number 1. Tower Lord, I own all 3. Queen of Fire is the third book. Haven't even picked that up yet, but I should really push through the second book because they have pretty good ratings.
Nice. Well, you're in good company if you stop reading once you get bored. Because Sean the Book Maniac is a booktuber who is big on bailing, as he calls it.
Fair enough.
He stops reading as soon as something bores him. But, all right, number 8. What kinds of stories are you drawn to, and are there any stories that you stay clear of?
So there's none that I stay clear of. I'll pretty much give anything a try if it sounds interesting. But what stories am I interested in I really love fantasy. So I like anything Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings-esque. A lot of books I read have orcs and elves and magic and stuff like that. And I guess, I read those types of books because I like to escape from my everyday life and live in these fantasy worlds. So that's why I like them. I don't have a problem with nonfiction books. In fact, I'll read them if I am really interested in the topic, like hunting and fishing type things. But generally it's fiction fantasy books where I can just get out of my everyday life and disappear in this fantasy world, whatever world it may be at the time. So, for example, I just read The Echoes Saga by Philip Quintrell. I think that's how you say his name. It's 6 books he's currently published. He has 3 more planned, so it's going to be 9 total books. And I think I read all the first 3, the first trilogy, in about 2 weeks. And then I read the second trilogy in about 2 weeks. I read them up at camp. Those were the books I was reading up at camp, nonstop, and I just love the story. And one thing anything with, really tight-knit group of friends or family or whatever, I really like the family and friend dynamics and the struggles and everything. So that's I recommend that series if you like fantasies. The Echo Saga by Philip Quantrell. Yeah.
I like to come home from being depressed by my everyday life and get more depressed by what I read.
Sounds awful.
That's what I like.
Sounds awful.
Number 9. If you could require the president to read one book, what would it be?
I don't think I could only require one book, but 2. I'll give you 2. I don't have specific books, but anything on selflessness and climate change.
My answer to this question would be, I think I disagree with the premise.
Because you can't read?
Yeah. But that's fair.
Yeah. Anything on climate change or selflessness.
Yeah. And number 10, what do you plan to read next?
Lewis and Clark Journal. I came to this decision a couple weeks ago.
Cool.
Haven't started it yet, but I have 2 copies and I got to pick one up and actually read it.
Yeah. I found a copy of the Lewis and Clark Journal at the library sale last week.
Yeah, nice.
I've been wanting to read it for a long time just because I like the American West, and
me
obviously
too.
They're trekking all around it in there. So yeah.
No, me too.
There's a trail that you can hike that follows the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
Of course you would know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you just heard that because she was talking quietly, but my mom just interjected telling us that there's a trail that you can hike that is like the Lewis and Clark trail that they went, if anyone's curious.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is the New York Times by the book tag. So.
Yeah. Do you have anything else? Darwin or evolution and beauty or anything?
I think we had a good chat about evolution and everything.
All right.
So anyway, thanks for joining me, Alex, and Mom a little bit. and anyway, whatever. We'll just sign off. So anyway, bye guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good luck. It was nice to meet you guys. Digitally, I guess. Yeah, have a good one.